Let's testify tonight. Oh God, you've done so much for me. I'm grateful and overwhelmed here at your feet. And I could stay here forever, Lord. But you call me to something more. And I hear you say that you have a plan to use every broken woman and man to display just how good you are. We are your living pieces of art. What good does it do to hide away when all of my scars are a picture of grace? All right. So I will testify of the power of God. I will tell the word of the hope I have found. For my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Oh, do you believe it? Has he done it for anyone else? I said, has he done it for anyone else? Because the God that I serve is always at work. Has he done it for anyone else? So come on and testify of the power of God. Come on and tell the world of the hope we have found. For our body was broken, our hearts were made whole, and that's too good to keep to yourself. Come on and testify of the power of God. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify your voice. This is my. So I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify. Come on, take it up. Jesus, my champion, the victor of grace, the only one worthy of all of my praise. Yeah. So come on and testify. Oh, somebody lift him high. Come on, testify the power of God. I will tell the world of the hope I have found. Oh, for my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Sing that. Oh, my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Oh, let's do that right now, Murfreesboro.
Hey guys, Michael J. Crawford here, and yes, still feeling like crap. So for those of you who are wondering, yes, my daughter is still in the hospital. Hopefully she'll get out in the next few days. We'll see. And yeah, I'm tired. And just to add icing on the proverbial cake, the wife's car died today. So yeah, it's been a rough one, I'm not going to lie. But God is good in the good times, and he's good in the bad times. And sometimes we got to remind ourselves of that. And it can be tricky. It really can. because sometimes it feels like when everything is piled up that you just don't see a reason for it all. And that's why you have books in the Bible like Job and the Psalms of Lamentation and the, even some of the writings of Paul that, you know, reach out and just say, God, I don't get it. And that's okay to sometimes not get it. It's okay to sometimes feel like it's all a bit much. Job certainly did. And if you've ever felt like you've had a bad day, read the book of Job. That man had a bad day. We'll get to it eventually, but yeah, Job is something else. And you know, we just have to sometimes. That's when it comes to having faith, and that's why I talk about the fact that faith is not belief in God. And by the way, my phone's probably going to go off a few times because it's funny, Gorilla. I saw you. I haven't seen you in a little while. I'm so glad you're here because I thought maybe you were mad at me and just decided you weren't going to watch anymore. So I am so glad you're here. But anyway, we have some major storms blowing through right now, and they just updated the severe thunderstorm warning for another hour. So lucky us. I'm trying to see if there's a current radar picture. That's just an area of the warning. There's the radar. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, so so you can see I'm the blue dot in the middle of the screen. So yeah. You've been watching. All right. You've been watching on then rewatch. Ah, gotcha. Aravic, my favorite coffee supporter, says hi. How you doing, Aravic? Hope you are well. And I'm not exaggerating when I say you're my favorite coffee supporter. Because so far you're my only coffee supporter, but thank you. Anyway, so yeah, it's forgive me if I sound again kind of low energy in comparison to my norm, but I'm just not feeling like my old self. Bradley says, was that a good thing to show us the exact location you are on a map? Well, first of all, that map was zoomed out pretty good. I mean, you guys know what city I'm in, and that blue dot was covering pretty much the whole city. And if somebody really wanted to track me down and kill me or something, I'm sure they could. But I am not worried. Because like I said, faith is not belief. Faith is trust. Faith is understanding that even when life is crappy, there's a greater good involved and a true greater good. And sometimes we scoff and laugh at the idea of a greater good. And we become, as a society, more and more cynical about the idea of a greater good. In fact, the wife and I, we were going to try to see it on Friday, but we rescheduled for Monday. Although now it looks like we probably should have kept the Friday. Just, anyway, long story long. But we're going to go see the new Mission Impossible movie. And we rewatched all 7 of the prior Mission Impossible movies over the last couple of weeks. And I'll be honest, I'd not seen Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning until like 2 nights ago. I did not see it in theaters. I think it's probably the only Mission Impossible movie that, well, I think that one and like number 5 or maybe 6, I don't remember. But there's like 2 of them that we didn't see in theaters. And, excuse me, looking back on it, I think it's too bad we skipped that one because it was pretty darn good. I really liked Dead Reckoning. I think it's probably one of the strongest in the Mission Impossible franchise. And it has me looking forward to Final Reckoning even more. It is a cliffhanger movie, which I genuinely find annoying. And so, in that respect, had I seen Dead Reckoning in 2019, or not 2019, 2023, I think it was, when it came out. If I saw it in 2023 and then realized I was going to have to wait a couple of years to see how it ended, I would be furious because this movie definitely is not a complete story. You can tell that, I mean, it's not even like an Empire Strikes Back ending. It's a to be continued ... kind of ending. And I usually hate that kind of thing. I really don't like when Hollywood takes a story and purposefully splits it into more parts than it ought to be. I'm looking at you, Hobbit. Don't get me wrong. I think the Hobbit trilogy was over on the whole very good, but it's, you know, they didn't need to include all the non-Hobbit story elements. Instead, it could have just been a single 90-minute to 2-hour movie. And I think it would have been fine. But leave it to Peter Jackson to make it into a trilogy of 3-hour films, and that's just not necessary. So anyway, had I seen Dead Reckoning in 2023, I probably would have been really pissed. But since I saw it just a week before Final Reckoning came out, I'm okay with it because I'm very much looking forward to Final Reckoning. And the reason I bring that up is I was talking, of course, about how society has become much more cynical about the very idea of a greater good. And one of the characters that they actually brought back from the first Mission Impossible film, which, oh my gosh, was like 30 years ago now. I can't believe that. But Tom Cruise has been doing Mission Impossible movies for 30 years. But anyway, was Mr. Kittredge, who was the secretary over the Impossible Missions Force. And for some reason, they got rid of him and replaced him with Hannibal Lecter, who then they replaced with Samuel L. Jackson. See if anybody gets that joke, and so on. And so now they brought back Kittredge. And I actually liked Kittredge because Kittredge was the kind of character that you knew was deep down a good guy who was on the right side of things, but he didn't like Ethan Hunt. And so, which is fine. There's some conflict, but there's no question of loyalties there. But anyway, in Dead Reckoning, Kittredge, when talking to Hunt, or maybe it's after, I don't remember if it's while he was talking to Hunt or afterwards, but he talks about how people still believe, or I think he was telling Hunt, yeah, that, you still believe that you're doing this for the greater good, as if there is such a thing, right? And so you're just doing this for our side, but there's no greater good. There's just us and them, right? And it's a very cynical way to look at it because the whole idea of, all the way back to the old series of Mission Impossible and stuff, is that they're good guys that are doing the dirty work necessary to be done to stop the bad guys. They're the kind of cool version of Section 31. And so I wasn't a fan of that, but I kind of get that. I like the fact that Ethan Hunt doesn't buy into that he still believes that he is fighting for what is right and good. And I say all that because with all the crap that I've been going through, and I know some of you guys have been going through a lot too, we have to remember that there is such a thing as the greater good. Sorry if you're getting some ASMR from T'Pring trying to lick the microphone. Anyway, just a thought. Kind of random, I know. Let me read a few chats, and then we'll get right into today's reading. Gorilla says, we got 70-mile-an-hour winds last night, and they didn't issue a warning until 12:52 and expired at 1. Branches came down at 10 to 11. Yeah, I hate when they're behind like that. We got a warning, honestly, when the storm was still about 50 miles away, of the possibility of baseball-sized hail. And I'm like, oh, I certainly hope not. I was almost going to say, oh, hail, no, but, that's just stupid. I certainly hope we don't get anything quite like that. For the greater good, wasn't that Grimwald's slogan as he tried to take over the world? I do not know. Captain Phantom Nerd is in the house. Good to see you, my friend. Hope you are well. Girl saying hey to Aravic and to Bradley and Captain Phantom Nerd, because Girl's just saying hi to everybody. Captain Phantom Nerd saying hi back. All right, so let's get right into it. So, yesterday we got some of the aftermath of the golden calf, and we had God showing his glory in part to Moses. And so today we're going to continue on. This is going to answer a question that I believe Stan Lee asked the other day. I didn't see Stan in the chat so far, but Stan, if you're watching this on a replay or if you're just lurking, this is for you, buddy. The golden hamburgers, yes. So let me switch screens here. But Stan, I hope it was Stan. I think it was him because Stan asked the most questions about, and we saw that Moses, God carved out these tablets for Moses with the law inscribed on them. And then Moses came down and found the people, just misbehaving. And Moses smashed the stone tablets. And I think Stan asked, well, did God give him another set of tablets? And this chapter answers that question. The Lord said to Moses, cut 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and I will write on them the words that were on the first tablets which you broke. Be prepared by morning. Come up Mount Sinai in the morning and stand before me on the mountaintop. No one may go up with you. In fact, no one must be seen anywhere on the mountain. Even the flocks and the herds are not to graze on that mountain. So God is like, we're gonna have a little private talk. Moses cut 2 stone tablets just like the first ones. He got up early in the morning, taking the 2 stone tablets in his hand. He climbed Mount Sinai, just as the Lord had commanded him. It's funny, the way that's written, putting the 2 stone tablets in his hand, it almost sounds like the stone tablets were like this big, like the size of an iPhone, and he could, maybe there were iPads, the original iPads. Get tablets. Anyway, the Lord came down in a cloud, stood with him there, and proclaimed his name Yahweh. Then the Lord passed in front of him and proclaimed, Yahweh, Yahweh is a compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger and rich in faithful love and truth, maintaining faithful love to 1,000 generations, forgiving wrongdoings, rebellion, and sin. But he will not leave the guilty unpunished, bringing the consequences of the father's wrongdoings on the children and grandchildren of the 3rd and 4th generation. So if you think about that, so what God is saying that, he will forgive you of your sin, but that doesn't mean that you are free from any consequence of your sin. And that's something that people don't understand. They think it would be like this, is that, okay, so say you murder someone, and the family of the person you murdered says, we forgive you. We don't hold a grudge against you. We're not going to, badger you or pester you or anything about this. However, you're still going to jail for the rest of your life. So it's something to remember that it's free. Forgiveness is not freedom from consequence. It's freedom from condemnation. All right, so Moses immediately bowed down to the ground and worshipped, and then said, My Lord, if I have indeed found favor in your sight, my Lord, please go with us, even though this stiff-necked people forgive our wrongdoings and sin and accept us as your own possession. And the Lord responded, Look, I am making a covenant. I will perform wonders in the presence of all your people that I have never done before, that have never been done in all the earth or in any nation. All the people you live among will see the Lord's work, for what I am doing with you is awe-inspiring. Observe what I command you today. I'm going to drive out before you the Amorites, Canaanites, Hittites, Pizerites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Be careful not to make a treaty with the inhabitants of the land that you're going to enter. Otherwise, they will become a snare among you. Now, what he's saying there, and just want to make sure this is clear. This, obviously he's talking to Moses in the literal sense about the making a treaty with these particular groups. But the message that should be carried forward, that we should be thinking about right now, is you don't make treaty. You don't, so to speak, make peace with evil. Because if you do, it will become a snare. It will ultimately destroy you, because if you make peace with evil, you become complicit about evil, and eventually you may even start supporting evil. Now, that doesn't mean that you become a hate monger, and it's a funny, tricky walk to go. You're called to love everyone, but you do not purposefully endorse or affirm evil. All right. Instead, you must tear down their altars, smash their sacred pillars, and chop down their Asherah poles, all this having to do with their cultish religions. You are never to bow down to another god, because Yahweh, being a jealous by nature, is a jealous God. Now, again, some people think, well, isn't jealousy a sin? No. Jealousy is, in fact, a virtue if you understand what jealousy actually means. So, if you consider, let's say that, I am married to a wonderful, beautiful woman, and so let's say we find ourselves at a gathering of some kind, a dinner or, or a restaurant or something like that. And while we're there, some guy comes up and starts basically trying to hit on my wife. I should be jealous of that, and I should be protective of her because she is my wife, right? Further, if my children are ever endangered by something, I need to step in and intervene. That is another meaning of the word jealousy. It doesn't mean that and people, unfortunately, in the modern context, what people confuse is jealousy and envy. And those are two different things. Jealousy is protecting that which is yours. Envy is coveting that which is not yours. So just it's actually a very, very important lesson for us to understand. And so God being jealous by nature, doesn't mean he's envious or something like that. Like, oh, if we pray to another God, he's envious because he wants those prayers and he didn't get the prayers of the other. No, he's protecting us from falling into that sin of idolatry. All right. Do not make treaty with the inhabitants of the land, or else when they prostitute themselves with their gods and sacrifice to their gods, and this is where it kind of gets into the details of that a little bit, they will invite you and you will eat their sacrifices. Then you will take some. What's that now? Probably another storm thing. Tornado warning, okay. So there is a tornado warning in effect. I'm trying to see how close it is to me. We're kind of on the tail end of it. So the wife is watching the live stream of all the weather stuff. She'll let me know if it gets so bad that we need to end the live stream early. Also, if the live stream just suddenly cuts off, it's because if we lose power or something, that's always possible. And the severe storm warning has been stretched out for another hour. All right. Anyway, excuse me. Sorry. This cough just pops in out of nowhere sometimes. I am so sorry. Let's see. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So when they prostitute themselves with their gods and sacrifice to their gods, they will invite you and you will eat of their sacrifices, and you will take some of their daughters as brides for your sons. Their daughters will prostitute themselves with their gods and cause your sons to prostitute themselves with their gods. So yeah. Do not make cast images of gods for yourselves. Observe the festival of unleavened bread. That's Passover. For those of you that don't realize that, you are to eat unleavened bread. Excuse me, for 7 days, at the appointed time in the month of Abib, as I commanded you. For you came out of Egypt in the month of Abib. The firstborn male from every womb belongs to me, including all your male livestock, the firstborn of cattle and sheep. You must redeem the firstborn of a donkey with a sheep. But if you do not redeem it, break its neck. You must redeem all the firstborn of your sons. No one is to appear before me empty-handed. So keep in mind, redeemed literally is like a synonym for paying for something. So it's basically saying, look, if you have so the firstborn males of everything in your household, from your own children to to your livestock, is to be dedicated to God. And so you have a couple of ways you can do this. You can either literally give it to the church, which is what a lot of people. So, like your firstborn male sheep, you'd give it to the priests at the temple, and etc. But there are some things that you don't give to the church. Donkeys being one of them. So instead, if you have your firstborn male donkey, you give the church a sheep. Or you can redeem, which would be basically to pay for the equivalent of that. You'll see stuff like that in books like Esther, where we'll talk about being a redeemer a lot. And of course, the final and greatest redeemer is Christ himself. Why not a donkey? Well, maybe God just doesn't like donkey holes. I just couldn't bring myself to say, but you know what I'm thinking. All right, so And by the way, so the Festival of Unleavened Bread, Passover, it's saying you must observe that festival. This is part of the reason that some Christians believe that all Christians are to observe that because this was the law handed down by Yahweh, and as such, everybody to this day should still be doing that. However, remember, these are commands that were specifically for the Jewish nation. These are not necessarily universal commandments. And so, and I know it can be tricky to see the difference between some of these. But the Festival of Unleavened Bread is a specifically Jewish event. Let's see. You are to labor for 6 days, but you must rest on the seventh day. You must even rest during plowing and harvesting times. All right, so this is an interesting one. So basically, that's the honoring the Sabbath kind of thing. And this is where some churches, like the Seventh-day Adventists and stuff like that, will get very worked up about how church should only be on Saturday because Saturday is Sabbath day and all that. Even though Christ himself addresses the Sabbath issues very much head on, even for the Jews. But again, while I hear some people argue that we should still be following all the Jewish traditions of the Bible, but I would ask, do you work 6 days a week at your job? And we're talking from sun up till sundown every day, 6 days a week. Because if you don't, that's just as much a violation of that law as, not honoring the Sabbath day. So something to consider. Because we, honestly, in the Western world, we get all up in arms if anybody demands anything more than 40 hours. And even then, it must be contained within a 5-day work week. Okay. Observe the Festival of Weeks with the first fruits of the wheat harvest and the Festival of the Ingathering. I can't remember what those festivals are named in modern vernacular, but it's more the Jewish traditions here. At the turn of the agricultural year, 3 times a year, all your males are to appear before the Lord God, the God of Israel. For I will drive out the nations before you and enlarge your territory. No one will covet your land when you go up 3 times a year to appear before the Lord your God. Do not present the blood for my sacrifice with anything leavened. The sacrifice of the Passover festival must not remain until morning. I remembered to hit the mute button that time. So notice, because we went through the whole description of how to properly do the sacrifices earlier. And so when you're doing all the stuff with the blood and the loaves and all the stuff that you're supposed to do, there's not to be any leaven. So something to remember. Bring the best first fruits of your land to the house of the Lord your God. That there again is the reinstitution of tithing. That the best of your first fruits should be dedicated to God directly. In the modern vernacular, you should give to the church first. You must not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. That's a really weird one to me. I know we've read that one before. I don't get it. I don't know who boils a kid in its mother's milk, but I guess it's something that they did back then. I grew up on a sheep ranch, and right next door to us was a goat ranch. I never heard of boiling a baby in its mother's milk. Never once have I ever heard of doing that. Sorry. Let's see. Lord also said to Moses, write down these words, for I have made a covenant with you and with Israel based on these words. Moses was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He did not eat bread or drink water. He wrote the 10 commandments, the words of the covenant, on the tablets. And Moses descended from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hands as he descended with the mountain. He did not realize that the skin of his face shone as a result of him speaking with the Lord. When Aaron and the Israelites saw Moses, the skin of his face shone. He was glowing, literally. They were afraid to come near him, but Moses called out to them. So Aaron and all the leaders of the community returned to him, and Moses spoke to them. Afterward, all the Israelites came near, and he commanded them to do everything the Lord had told him on Mount Sinai. When Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil over his face. But whenever Moses went before the Lord to speak to him, he would remove the veil until he came out. After he came out, he would tell the Israelites what had been commanded, and the Israelites would see that Moses' face was radiant. Then Moses would put the veil over his face again until he went to speak with the Lord. Forgot the mute button that time, sorry. All right, so there we go. That's actually another interesting chapter. A lot of stuff that we don't realize is in Exodus, but clearly is. So I hope that you guys are enjoying our walk through the Old Testament so far. I certainly am. But now let's get to your chat. And I'm not going to be staying on real long, as I'm sure you can tell. I'm definitely not playing at the top of my game here. All right, Ariel says, giving Moses 3 stone tablets. No, that was a different movie. Let's see. Ariel says, question, it took around 40 days and nights to make tablets here. God told Moses the commandments and he chiseled them. Well, there you go. Oh, sure, God can show all his glory and everyone loves him. But if I show all my glory, I get called. Yeah, that's a little different. Which, by the way, reminds me of how I was telling my wife. There's a classic song that was used in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Brandy. Where Ego was quoting the song, talk about, the sailors and brandy and true love being the sea and stuff. And, most people really like the song. It's kind of a romantic sounding ballad. But I was telling my wife, that song is filthy. That song is absolutely filthy because and nobody catches it, which is really funny. But I'm gonna look it up so I make sure I get it exactly as it is. All right. All right. So yeah. Brandy used to watch his eyes when he told his sailor stories. She could feel the ocean fall and rise. She saw his raging glory. She could feel the ocean fall and rise. She saw his raging glory. So, Gorilla, you're not alone there. Yahweh sounds Chinese. Well, it's Yiddish. Gorilla, you're always showing your glory. That's why you think 100 men want to battle you. Yeah, then, if you actually know about gorillas, the opposite is true there. God is making covenant into coven as he's into witchcraft plagiarism. Depends on if you murder for your jealousy. that's actually an interesting point. If and keep in mind, our own legal system is based very much on the Mosaic Law. If someone is imminently threatened with physical harm or death, and you intervene and using an appropriate amount of physical force to intervene, that person dies, that is not murder. So, there is absolutely exceptions in the law. And remember, my very favorite Bible verse in the entire Bible is based on that actual exact predilection. Let me see if I can find it real quick, because I always have trouble finding it for some reason. I always forget which book it's in. And I think I got it wrong again. No, must be. Dang it! I lost it again. All right, so. Okay, I was right the first time. I was just in the wrong verse. All right. In the right book, wrong verse. That's not it. What is it? All right. Oh, man, I'm an idiot. All right, there we go. If two men are fighting with each other, and the wife of one steps in to rescue her husband from the one striking him, and she puts out her hand and grabs his genitals, you are to cut off her hand. You must not show pity. So right there is, if someone grabs your junk, you cut their hand right off, and that is perfectly okay. Salty doesn't like it when people flirt with Pepper. Absolutely. Salty and Pepper together forever, till death do us part. Obligation 16 sounds like something that would cause a lot of fighting with each other. I'm not sure what you mean by obligation 16. Oh, it's Pepper. She's letting Salt know the guy from the party is hitting on her. And, oh, ouch, that's a cough. Do you have anything for it? Well, NyQuil. I'm just dealing with it right now. If it doesn't go away in a few days, I'll go see a doctor. But, I hope it's nothing serious. I did do a COVID test, and it came back negative. I'm hearing a lot of prostitution talk here. Are you trying to tell me something? Is this my intervention? Hey, I'm not judging anybody here. Whatever you do for a living is your business. But if that business happens to be prostitution, then from a godly perspective, you should probably seek other employment. Well, get the lawn chair and ratchet straps ready. And no. Sounds like Mike has a cold and not just a cough. Yeah, I'm definitely I'm congested all over the place. Like my ear is so congested I can't hear out of this ear anymore. It's really bugging the bejesus out of me. And yeah, it is what it is. Why not a donkey? Well, I already answered that one. And a good question. Let's see. I assume the LOL is for my answer to why not a donkey. Michael works 24/7 for Uber as well as YouTube. Even when he sleeps, he's working. That's why Pepper gets on Michael for talking in his sleep. Yes, that is absolutely true. I work way too much. I am not. It's so funny because now that I'm unemployed, I'm working more than ever, and it's driving me crazy because I'm trying to just make ends meet. Because Social Security just doesn't pay enough, which is stupid. How can we be the wealthiest country in the world and the dumbest country in the world when it comes to finances? Okay, Michael, for your health, we should pause here and let you recover some. Do you want to make yourself more sick? I definitely don't want to make myself more sick. They're talking about haggis. I don't think haggis is a baby being boiled in its mother's milk, right? And not sure what something answered your question. Let's see. You're also looking very flushed. I hope you know how have some stuff. I hope you have some stuff you're able to take. Honestly, I'm just taking NyQuil and trying to get a little more rest than I had been, which is like, so after this live stream, I'm probably just going to go to bed. There's not going to be a nerd fights tomorrow because Mr. Know-It-All is still kind of on his leave. And so tomorrow I'm just going to go to bed as early as possible. Yesterday, I spent most of the day. Well, okay, so there was a situation with my daughter, which I'm not going to get into details, but that happened at like 7:30 in the morning and lasted until about 11:30 in the morning. Then I went home and slept until right before I did the live stream, and then after the live stream, went back to bed. So yeah. Trent says, I'm enjoying the Old Testament reading. Never looked so deeply into the Torah before. Very interesting. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Multi-Gunman is in the house. How are you doing, buddy? Yeah, I don't know. You didn't say when, so I don't know if you've gotten that bone density test. So if you know, make sure to keep us informed on that. What song is filthy? Are you talking about the national anthem of Kuroga? Well, anything having to do with Kuroga is filthy, but for different reasons. But obviously, I was talking about Brandy. I believe Reed Zimmer has the Dominator out by your area. I have no idea who Reed Zimmer is, and I have no idea what you mean by the Dominator. Let's see. This sounds very convenient for you, Michael. How many times have you protected your wife because of jealousy? Well, I don't have a number, but let's just say I might need a bigger backyard. Mercer is in the house, says Kit is amazing, but only in the original show. KR 2000, 2008 version sucked. I would tend to agree with you on that. And Mercer, by the way, I have to say, I am completely shocked and amazed that you came here post and or season 2, and the first thing out of your mouth wasn't how awesome Luthen is. Stan Lee in the house says, darn, YouTube notifications still, yeah. Well, Stan, I'm sorry about that, but, you know, that's funny because I mentioned you earlier. I think it was you that was asking about, was there any additional stone tablets after the originals? And that's what this chapter was all about. Godson says, how's your daughter? Don't know yet. And so, you know, and again, I'm not going to give any details because, you know, she's an adult and she probably wouldn't want me, like, just talking about it on the internet. But we don't know yet. She's at the hospital now. Hopefully, she'll be home soon. Interesting, the tablets actually written by God were destroyed, and we ended up with Moses' transcription. Yeah. Doing pretty good. Haven't gotten the density test yet. Okay. Grill saying hi to Mercer, and to Stan, and to Godson, and to Multi Gunman, because Gorilla just has to say hi to everybody, and to Tristan. And then Multi Gunman saying bye back to Gorilla. We had the tablets, I guess. Yeah. Luthen made the ultimate sacrifice. No, he didn't. He took the coward's way out. You know what? What Luthen should have done is killed Dedra. Or Dedra, however you say her name. But that's just my thought. Then he could have killed himself. That would have been a sacrifice if he'd killed her and then killed himself. I think that would have been better. Or, since this whole thing, like the whole purpose of Andor seems to be that murder is good, Luthen kills her, and then what's-her-face, not Princess Leia, comes in and kills Luthen. And then, hey, Andor can kill her. Why not? Let's see. MIA, missing in action. Okay. And this is also where we get the general punishment idea. Generational punishment, yes. And we talked about that a little bit, Stan. I don't know if you heard it, but more or less the gist of it is that that God forgives your sin, but he does not remove the consequence of your sin. So, you dug you dug the hole, now you got to climb out of it, kind of thing. However, he's not going to be mad at you for digging the hole. The building was surrounded. He still could have killed her. She was right there in the room with him. He was literally surrounded by various artifacts that he could have had rigged to kill her. In fact, he could have had, and I'm surprised he didn't have the whole shop rigged to explode. Tornado chaser. He turned the truck into a fortified tank low and spiked the ground and shoots rockets to get probes into a tornado. And if crap hits the fan, he can drive spikes like 8 feet into the ground to anchor it. Yeah, those people in my book are just stupid. We know what a tornado is. I'm sorry. We know what a tornado is. And if you really want to shoot rockets into a tornado, all right, knock yourself out. What I like about a church is one with people, a culture. What I like about a church is you want a church with people and a culture. I can get behind that. So when the tablets were destroyed and we got Moses' version, are they different from God's tablets? No, remember, it says, and that's actually another thing that people get confused, because they think that there's different versions of the Ten Commandments here. Because they think that the stuff that God was saying to Moses was the Ten Commandments, but it doesn't say that. It does say that the Ten Commandments were written on the stone tablets, but it doesn't say that what he wrote was exactly and only what God said in that passage, word for word. So God is instructing them to destroy the other people's altars, and the Lord will do awesome work for them. Yep. But keep in mind, they destroy the altars after God has already driven them away. God says the two Christian churches I like are the Moravian Church, never heard of it, and the Orthodox Church, which you know my feelings on. True, Luthen's liquid metal didn't even manage to melt the entire machine. Yeah, I mean, come on. This guy is supposedly the mastermind behind everything. He should have had that shop rigged. If the shop is rigged to explode, the Empire facility next door, not to mention anyone who would have consignments there, would detect explosives. Why? Prove that that's true. First of all, what Empire facility next door? I don't remember them ever showing that his next door neighbor was an Empire facility. Or you just saying that because, you think there's an Empire facility next door. And generally speaking, you don't see people in Star Wars just walking into a room and immediately scanning the place for explosives. I've never seen that happen. The only time people look for stuff like that is if they suspect that something might be there. So, like, they did take a scanning team onto the Millennium Falcon in the original Star Wars, but that was because they captured the Millennium Falcon under suspicious circumstances. And so they figured, well, let's scan this entire ship and check what's going on here, which is kind of interesting because in the same movie, earlier in that movie, they were able to scan an escape pod as it was flying away from a Star Destroyer and detect that there was no life forms on board. But the Millennium Falcon, they couldn't tell until they took a refrigerator-sized scanning unit and a half a dozen people in it. Another update from the weather people. Let's see what we got going now. Tornado warning. Let's see. Oh, no, this one is a flash flood warning. So, not too worried about that. We are not in a flood zone here. I think they're in the process of recovering some of the data since he didn't even manage to completely destroy it. Yeah, and he should have had it rigged so that he wouldn't have to sit there and gently pour the acid crap on there. He should have just had a vat of acid ready to just dump onto it with the push of a button. I don't think I could live in a tornado country. I would go nuts. I'll admit, Tristan, it's a little unnerving at times, but at the same time, I'll say this for tornadoes. You get warning. Like even if it's just a few minutes, you usually get a few minutes warning before a tornado strikes. Whereas with something like an earthquake, which I grew up with on the West Coast, they just happen. No self-destruct, no escape route. Yeah, not much of a mastermind. We don't have any artifacts that actually interacted with God. So we don't have any artifacts that actually interacted with God. Not, well, some people would argue the Shroud of Turin, which I know other people say it's clearly fake. Some people say it's clearly real. I'm not an expert. I don't know. And then there's also supposedly the Spear of Destiny was in use by, I'm forgetting his name now, but some guy that was a great conqueror a few centuries later. Which is supposedly the spearhead that pierced Christ's side. Those are the only two artifacts that I know of off the top of my head that have been directly interacted with God that are claimed to have been in possession after the year zero. The original tablets might be the only items we had that were literally touched by God. That is true. And you know what's interesting? And we're not done yet because I'm not even sure because I'm not reading ahead because I find it more interesting to go through it with you guys. But in Raiders of the Lost Ark, granted, I know that Raiders of the Lost Ark is not completely historically accurate, even though Steven Spielberg tried to make it fairly accurate. But the Ark itself, the angels are kind of wrong. But at any rate, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indy says that the tablets in the Ark are the original tablets that Moses brought down and smashed, so that they would be the broken remains of the original tablets as opposed to the ones that Moses carved. So it might actually be. But then we don't know if the Ark even still exists. The good thing about having an antique shop is the ability to funnel a large amount of money as antiques have subjective values, but the drawback is people would scan regularly for explosives. I've not seen anyone scan for explosives. And in fact, didn't they show in Andor that they had a fake artifact that was actually a device? I can't remember what they were doing. But they Krennic was in the room and they didn't scan the device. So I just have to disagree with you, Mercer. I don't see anybody routinely scanning anything. And even then, like Luthen would say that, well, there's two items, which I think he was really talking about himself and Deidre, but he said there were two items in the store that had suspicious origins, but basically everything else had been verified. They kind of make it out that in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, it wasn't just, oh, whip out your tricorder and you can see that it's 10,000 years old in 2 seconds. So why didn't God send the Egyptians from Cairo to let the Jews have that area so they didn't have to roam the desert for 40 years? That was punishment in part for the golden calf incident. And in fact, that's what, well, we'll get into that as the book goes on. And the other shop had the device attached to the artifact to hide it, right? I don't remember. They had said he was piggybacking I didn't mean comms, off the Empire facility nearby. And of course, people would care if there were bombs in a shop with valuables. Okay, but nearby doesn't mean next door. And sure, people would care if there were bombs in a shop with valuables. People would care if there were bombs in any shop, period. But again, show me in Star Wars where people casually scan any place for explosives. Show me that and I'll shut up about it. Otherwise, you're just making stuff up to have it make sense in your head. And I'm not doing the writer's job for them. I'm sorry, but Luthen went down like a punk. Terrible scanning team. They didn't detect humans an inch under their feet. Yeah. Well, keep in mind, by the time the scanning team got up, I'm assuming they got out of their hidey hole because they shot them almost immediately. And didn't they know that the Falcon was a smuggler ship? You would think so, but, I guess the Empire's DMV isn't that efficient. Let's see. How can you do more shorts videos where you go to fast food restaurants and behave like a Karen, salty Karen? The comment section was hilarious. Thank you. Well, first of all, I wasn't being a Karen. I was genuinely upset because as a person who is physically disabled, and it's very difficult for me to get around, to have a restaurant lock their doors and not grant access to their restrooms in violation of the ADA during business hours and not even have a sign posted for it, I was upset. And they refused to give an answer. And then finally, she said it's because, they didn't have enough people. Well, I can certainly understand that. I used to be a restaurant manager, and I would have been more than happy with that explanation if they had just hung a sign on the door. And it's perfect recruiting opportunity. You say, sorry, we don't have enough staff to open up the dining room. If you'd like to apply, go to www.workhereplease.com or whatever. With giant wheeled supercomputers in tow, yes. So the floor panels might have been specially coded. I suppose that's possible. But then again, it seems like sensors or scanners or whatever you want to call them in a galaxy far away are extraordinarily unreliable in comparison to the Trekverse. And I'm not saying that as like, oh, Star Wars sucks, because I like Star Wars. I'm not a fan of Andor and what they did to the lore, but I do like Star Wars overall. In fact, I love Star Wars. But from a technological standpoint, Star Wars is medieval compared to the 23rd, 24th century Star Trek universe. Let's see. And yeah, Ariel saying possibly as far as especially coded, like an anti-scanning alloy. But the problem with that kind of thing, and excuse me, the problem with that kind of thing is that a plot hole like that can be fixed with one line of dialogue, right? Like, in fact, like, okay, so, with when they came out of the compartments and And Solo said, I use these compartments for smuggling. I never thought I'd be smuggling myself. All you had to do is throw in one more line. Like Chewie could have growled something, and he said, "Yes, Chewie, it was a great idea. You had to coat them with, MacGuffinism so that they couldn't be scanned." You know, Bam, all good. And maybe from far away scans, far, far away. What's worse, tornadoes, earthquakes, or floods? I'm with you, Ariel. I think earthquakes is the worst. Wait, you get warnings? Hell, last tornado didn't issue a warning until the storm was 15 miles past. Well, I don't know what to say, man. Your weather people suck. Because we always get warnings at it. In fact, every time there's a storm, we can watch a stream of the storm, and like they'll say, okay, it looks like we're getting a rotation system here, and they'll zoom in on the map and show you exactly where it is. And so they'll say, if you live in this area, get to shelter right now, no joke, and then they'll say, oh, the radar's picking up debris. That means it's touched down. If you're anywhere in this area, you better already be in shelter. And if you're not, get in shelter right now. So, yeah. And Holy Grail, I don't think there's any actual claims of the Holy Grail existing outside of fiction. Not that I know of. And the other thing about the Holy Grail, I mean, because you could also argue, well, anything Jesus ever touched, right? What about, he was a carpenter. What about a chair he made? What about every article of clothing he ever wore? What about, the sand that he walked on? So I don't think that just because Jesus may have interacted with an object makes that object have superpowers. All right, what's this one? Lightning in your area. Well, duh. Let's see. I'm not sure what you mean. Oh, no, don't think. Oh, yeah, as far as the Holy Grail, yeah, I don't think anybody claims that they found it. Don't get me started. It's three-way tie between earthquakes, tornadoes, and bears. Good. Felt stupid if I was still looking. Bears. We know them as badgers. Don't mess with badgers. You don't want to piss off a badger, I will tell you. The lack of public surveillance on Coruscant are surprising. Yeah, that's the funny thing. If the Empire is supposed to be so freaking oppressive, why don't they have survey? I mean, like you watch a Mission Impossible movie, and you'll see them like bring up all the surveillance cameras in that area, and let's see what we can find out, and punch this up and punch that up, and let's track this person and facial ID. They don't have any of that. This device was after it was movies. The device was after it was movies to Skulden's place. It wasn't an explosive, but a bug. I'm not 100% sure. Oh, I think you're talking about yes, I remember what you're. If what you're talking about is what I'm thinking of, and I'm sorry if I'm kind of, sort of, in a little bit of haze here because I didn't pay that close attention to Andor in comparison to most Star. Like I haven't watched Andor 25 times because I didn't like it that much. But if what you're talking about is when, if I remember correctly, Mon Mothma and the other person were talking, and someone figured out that there were bugs in the place. But again, now you're not talking about a like basically the equivalent of going to a consignment store. You're talking about going into Ted Cruz, a hotel room with Ted Cruz. And Ted Cruz's security guys are going to scan the area for surveillance, right? That actually makes sense. What wouldn't make sense is for just random people to come in and scan your local 7-Eleven. Considering human cities like to have cameras everywhere, yeah. Is it just me or is Michael Stormtrooper helmet in different position? That could be. Sometimes I bump into it and it shifts a little bit. Or he's just mad at me today. They don't seem to have much trouble getting away with bombings. Yeah, they planted bombs all over the place. I mean, and that's the other thing. Like again, we're seeing that not only in Andor season 1 do we have a terrorist attack against an Imperial garrison where they stole an entire payroll for an entire sector, but we see that this was not an isolated incident and that Luthen himself has been bombing various Imperial targets for decades. And so that, I'm sorry, but so you're saying the Empire is evil because they're trying to catch a guy who's been bombing them? Where's the camera? The camera might have moved a little bit too, because every once in a while I have to take the camera off of its stand and reset the app, because it's actually an iPhone that's the camera. And there's an app on it. And like today, when I first signed in, it wasn't working because of the emergency alert system, even though the iPhone has not been connected to service in a very long time. It's still, if somebody sends out something over the emergency alert system, it still activates on that phone. Just like you can dial 911 from any cell phone, even a dead one, as long as it has battery life in it. All right. Maybe he was dressing up. No, unfortunately, that helmet is a little too small for my big old head. And I wanted to print a bigger one, but I couldn't get the printer to work again after it printed that. And I've been fighting with Creality, the makers of the printer, for the last 5 months about that. And they finally, just a few days ago, said that they would be willing to replace the printer, but I got to ship this one back to them first. And unfortunately, I mean, they gave me a shipping label, so I don't have to pay for the shipping, but the printer weighs almost, it's like 180 pounds or something. It's ridiculously heavy. And so I have to, I still have the original box that it came in, but I'm going to need some styrofoam to brace some of the stuff on the inside of it. And I also need to disassemble a couple of parts so it can ship properly. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's I don't have the physical strength to do it, and unfortunately, whatever bug I have, I gave to Joshua, so I got to wait for him to get better too. Let's see. If we can recover black boxes from exploded planes, blowing up the shop would do no good. ASIC would actually affect the comms. I don't know what you mean by ASIC, but I will say this. I don't think the Empire could recover the black box from an exploded plane. From what we've seen of the Empire, I don't think they could do it. But even if they could, that doesn't mean, like, you have to have a black box. And if there's no black box in Luthen's shop, then there's nothing that you can do, especially if you have your little acid thing. Maybe that's what you're talking about, the acid. But the acid can be part of the plan. Like, it splatters onto all the communications equipment just before the bomb goes off, and therefore it makes everything completely useless. But the problem is that there's nothing in there. Like, all you needed would be a line of dialogue, like when what's her name, not Princess Leia, is going to murder Luthen, and you could go to a flashback of like one of their first days in the shop, and she's saying, we should really rig the place to explode if the Empire ever finds out. And Luthen goes, no, 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 because there's an Imperial regiment next door and they might detect the explosive. If you threw that line of dialogue in there, I would have nothing. Robert in the house says, saw Trick Hello there tonight. Saw a video on YouTube the other day that a certain states were going to require DoorDashers to get a business license. Hopefully, use an Uber driver eventually won't. Well, if they do it to DoorDash, they'll probably do it to Uber as well. But, it's like, look, I know that I don't want to piss off everybody again, so I'll just shut up. I was going to say, Tennessee is a deeply red state, but that doesn't matter anymore. It's not like the Republican Party is, anti-tax anymore. And before anyone says that Trump was talking big on eliminating tax on tips and overtime and Social Security, I was watching the Budgetary Committee, and they were questioning the guy, saying, so does this budget eliminate taxes on tips? No. Does it eliminate taxes on Social Security? No. Does it eliminate taxes on overtime? No. So where is it? It's not. It's just blowing smoke. And it's not, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the Republicans are bad and the Democrats are good. I think they're both bad. But, nobody in Washington, D.C. is on your side. And what were the 3 times a year men were supposed to appear before the Lord? That was for the 3 harvest festivals. Do they all go at the same time, like Mecca? Well, it's a festival, so yes. Easter, Christmas, and half price off the buffet. And is Moses glowing, like after talking to God, the reason that they say pregnant women are glowing? That's an interesting question. I wonder if that is the origin of that. It might be. Is that a way of telling us Moses was pregnant? No, but Moses was the first and really the only person that talked to God face to face in a real sense. And just that experience made him literally irradiate with God's energy. The holy chair of the Last Supper. You know what I it's horrible, but it's funny. Excuse me. The kids in the hall did a sketch where they were talking about archaeological wonders. And they were like, everybody knows that Jesus was a carpenter. But recent archaeological finds have shown that he wasn't a very good one. And then he holds up a table and he says, this table only has 2 legs. And we know that 3 is the generally accepted minimum number of legs for a table. So it was just kind of funny. And did he ever stop glowing, or did he wear the veil all the time? Well, based on what it said there, it sounds like he was just glowing for the rest of his days. But, we'll see if it mentions that later. Or Batman had everybody's cell phone tapped. Yeah, that's true. That happened in The Dark Knight. So, I mean, honestly, the tech we have today, with the exception of things like anti-gravity and hyperspace and some of their plasma technology, everything else, we're more advanced today. In fact, we have planes today that can go faster than a TIE fighter. Good old Batman just spying on everybody for their own good. Yeah, that's Batman for you. Think he was stay that Moses wore the veil when not talking to God, so everyone else wore a veil and talked with God, no veil. I don't think, well, Moses was the only one who talked to God face to face. Do you know that there were angel cults? There still are. And it's like angels can be fascinating, but the problem is they're also it's very easy to become obsessed with them. And when we start thinking about angels more than we're thinking about he who sent them, then that is a problem. George Went from Cheers passed away. You know, Mercer, you just love coming on here and telling me who passed away. You should change your name to the Living Death Note. By the way, was there any truth to the Danny DeVito thing? Uh, let's see. Yeah, it looks like he's still alive. So I don't want you telling me people passed away unless you know it's a confirmed source. Also, another thing God may have touched would be Noah's Ark, be considered touched by God because of the storms and people saying they have found the base of it. People have been saying they found Noah's Ark since I was a kid. That's what, and by the way, who cares? You know what Noah's Ark is? It's a bunch of wood. That's all it is, you know. And that's the problem. We put too much. We want to worship that which was created rather than the creator. Like, you know, I think about wouldn't it be cool to have the staff of Aaron? Because the staff of Aaron is what Moses used to part the Red Sea, and he turned it into a serpent, and he brought down the plagues on Egypt and stuff. That's serious staff. That makes Gandalf's staff look pretty petty. However, really, the staff is just a piece of wood. And it was God who was with them that did all that stuff. And we forget that. And instead, we just want to think that the staff is magic. Let's see. I guess that's why they need the Death Star. It's not exactly easy keeping an entire galaxy in line. Yeah, they failed at it miserably. I'm talking about the festival. Even in Krennic, when Kayla removed a bug from the table she sold to Skolden. I'm oh, okay. I'm trying to remember. I know that there was a bug that was found at some point, but did they ever scan for explosives? Because keep in mind, apparently with Imperial scanners, you have to scan for a specific thing. He's a terrorist. He's a bad guy. I think, you know, if you're talking about Luthen and Saul Guerrero, I agree 100%. And in fact, I would say this is what Andor shows is that while it is 100% true that Luke, Han, Leia, Lando, all those guys are absolutely the heroes that we want them to be, they were all hoodwinked. They were all tricked into being heroes for an evil cause. Because they didn't, you know, it's funny because people say, oh, well, you know, this changes Rogue One. This is Rogue One changes A New Hope, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, actually, what this whole thing is showing is that everybody that started the rebellion were a bunch of terrorists, and the people that took over the rebellion were fooled into thinking the terrorists were right. But the first tablets were said to have actually been inscribed. Yes, that is true. I imagine some sort of lightning from the finger not sitting down with a hammer and chisel. Yeah, well, it doesn't specify how he wrote them. But except I do think it says with the finger of God, if I remember correctly. Let's go there real quick. Marriage and divorce laws, inclusion, exclusion, violations, unsolved murders, Burley's son. Try to remember where it was that. Let's see. Let's. This isn't current. Man, it was a while. Oh no, I'm in the wrong freaking book. All right. I was like, why don't I see it? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm still in Deuteronomy. Let's see, we want Exodus. All right. And let's see. Let's see. Yes, so it's Exodus 31:18. It says. So let's go there. 31. All right. 31:18. When he finished speaking with Moses on Mount Sinai, he gave the two tablets of the testimony, stone tablets inscribed by the finger of God. So that's the only detail given. Yes, Frank? Yes, I know. She wants to get down and run around, then the lightning strikes and she gets a little scared. Let's see. And yeah, as far as the new tablets, it sounds like Moses chiseled the new ones, but the originals were inscribed by the fingers of God, or the finger of God. It says singular. Let's see. He'd talk. Empire would kill his family. Not sure what you mean there. Seems a lot of the show is about making things better for the next generation, like Cassian's kid. Yeah, I kind of get the idea there, but the problem is, and my biggest problem with Andor as a series is the way that the Empire was portrayed in the last. The way that the Empire was portrayed in the last couple of episodes is how they should have been portrayed in the first couple of episodes. And when I say the first couple of episodes, I mean Andor season 1. Instead of starting the series with Andor literally committing a double homicide, one of which was a guy who was unarmed, at his mercy, and literally begging for his life, and Andor shot him in the face. Right? So instead of opening up with that, with Andor literally murdering a guy in cold blood, I say you start with showing the oppression of the Empire. You start with a montage of people like being nervous because there's stormtroopers everywhere, random people just being arrested off the streets because they look funny or whatever. And, you could even have like, you see, a shopkeeper and some stormtroopers, are walking by, and one of the stormtroopers like grabs something. The shopkeeper's like, "You gonna pay for that?" And so then they immediately just grab him and cuff him and drag him away. And then as they drag him away, you see in the background that was blurry comes into focus. Mon Mothma's there, so that we can see that Mon Mothma and Bail Antilles and all these characters saw what the Empire was, saw that the Empire was evil, and realized something had to be done. Because honestly, the way that it's portrayed in the series, life is pretty darn good until Saul Guerrero and Luthen start a campaign of terrorist actions against the Empire. That's just Republican terrorism talk. That's how the Rebel Alliance works with terror. The Empire was employing all. Someone gives that speech about not being there to witness what they've started yet, right? Yeah, that was Luthen. I actually don't know because I haven't watched Andor. Uh, it's a beautiful show. Don't get me wrong. I'm not from a production value and all that. It's the best that any Star Wars outside of the theaters has ever looked. Luthen might be a mastermind, but he's also flawed. That's the point. He is only a genius, except when he wasn't. He was terrible at convincing people and also terrible at swallowing his pride. Again, you're just filling in the blanks for the writers. Flawed would be to consistently show how he has a problem. Now, was he a little bullheaded? Sure, but ultimately, his death was not because he was bullheaded. His death was because of his noble sacrifice, which was stupid and pointless, in my opinion. Will no tax on tips help you at all? Does Uber tax tips? Uber doesn't tax anything. The government does. And yes, my tips are counted as income. And so, yes, if there was no tax on tips, it would benefit me. Granted, not a lot because I don't get a ton of tips. However, might be interesting if they consider it a tip when you give people money on like YouTube and stuff, like a super chat, because then you could claim that that's a tip and therefore tax free. However, there no tax on tips is nowhere in the budget. It doesn't exist. It's just an empty promise. One line of dialogue could fit a lot and fix a lot in sci-fi. Yeah, that is true. That is 100% true. And I'm not saying like every other franchise is not guilty of this. I'm just saying that with Andor, it's just so blatant a problem in a few scenes. And of course, the biggest problem is that the Empire seems like a pretty nice place to live until the last two episodes. Didn't he just sign something today about the tips? I don't know. Did he? If so, great. Although I don't know if he can. I don't think the president can change the budget by executive order. But maybe he did. Let me see. No tax on tips. Okay, so no, it says the Senate passes a no tax on tips bill, so that's a good thing. So let's see if I can find. So in that case, great. It wasn't in the budget, so I think what probably happened is after that Senate hearing where they were grilling everybody about the no tax on tips that they finally decided to add it. Let's see. The Senate passed a proposal on. This is just the first article that popped up. It doesn't matter where it's from. I'm just reading the first article that popped up on it. Senate passed a proposal Tuesday to eliminate taxes on tips, advancing a campaign promise by President Trump that attracted bipartisan support. Why it matters. It came as a genuine surprise to many in the chamber. The expectation was at least one senator would object to the passage of the measure. But when Senator Jackie Rosen, Democrat from Nevada, asked unanimous consent to pass the bill, no lawmakers on either side of the aisle objected. Axel's first report. Oh, yeah, and she's the one that was grilling them about the fact that it wasn't in the budget bill. So good for her. And see, it wasn't Trump that got you no tax on tips. It was a Democrat. The no tax on tips was introduced by Senator Ted Cruz, Republican, and sponsored by a bipartisan group of senators. But then Jackie asked for unanimous consent, and they just passed it. And obviously, and like I said, if you saw her grilling about the why wasn't it in the bill, it was actually pretty brutal. So good for them. I mean, I'll give them credit where credit is due. And that goes for Senator Cruz as well. Both Democrats and Republicans, because obviously it's a bipartisan committee. So it's a little bit more Republicans than Democrats because the Republicans hold the majority right now. But it's the representation on most of these committees is based on the number of senators from each party. And so, if it's 50-50, then the committee would be split right down the middle. But at any rate, so yeah, this is a very rare exception to where they actually did something, probably because of the fact that Trump made a big deal out of it. Nobody objected to it. I mean, that's the funny thing is because the no tax on tips is something the Democrats have been for quite a while because it is a tax cut for the poor. And generally speaking, what's the whole mantra from the Democrats? That the Republicans want to pass tax cuts for the rich, and they're tired of that. Now, personally, I still think we should just change the tax code completely to a simple flat tax with no write-offs, no exemptions on all income. That does include tips, that does include overtime, and it does include capital gains. So all income is taxed at the same rate. And that's for individuals and businesses. Yeah. And Alexander says, hello, world. Robert says, yes, I know what you mean. I was surprised when I found a few years ago that even here in South Carolina, abortion was allowed. I was like, what? Something about same-sex relationships. Not 100% sure what you mean there. But honestly, as far as abortion is concerned, I'm anti-choice. I'm not pro-life. I am anti-choice. That's my official stance, and I'm sticking to it. All right, so much for red states. Yeah, everything's purple. Yeah, well, you know what? No, it's funny. Everything is red-blue or blue-red. You see, and this is the big game, and I'm sorry, I know that some of you might find this messed up for me to say, but it's what I honestly believe. The Republicans and the Democrats do not give a crap about you or me. What they care about is maintaining power for their two parties and only their two parties. So they want to make sure that the American people are so obsessed over abortion and so obsessed over transgender bathrooms that that nobody is talking about the fact that they're destroying the U.S. economy together. And it's not, oh, that party does it and this party doesn't. No, both parties have been systematically destroying, dismantling, disrupting the United States economy for decades. But everybody's just fighting over pro-choice or pro-life or same-sex marriage, and now it's, transgender bathrooms and stuff like that. Because those are the issues that get people emotional, that hit people in the feels. And so when we start talking about economics and recessions and stuff like that, people, it doesn't, it doesn't create that kind of emotional connection. And so people kind of tune out. Faster than a tie, but not in space. Well, that is true so far. However, the space shuttle is faster than a tie in space. The U.S. Senate on May 20th unexpectedly passed a bill to create a new tax deduction on tips worth. Yeah, but see, now that's a problem. If it's a tax deduction on tips, this is where it's going to get ugly. And I can see, there's always a catch to these things. That means that they're going to say, okay, here's what your income was. Say it's like $38,000 or whatever. And then there's your personal deduction and say a deduction for your spouse or whatever. And then there'll be a deduction for tips, right? So let's say that you put 17,000 of your income was from tips. Now they're going to say, prove it. And the problem is that it's going to be difficult to prove because most of the time it depends on I'm trying to think. Unless businesses are required to put tips and wages in separate columns on your W-4 or W-2 or whatever it is every year. That might be the only way to prove it. Because what most people honestly do, most people that get cash tips, like restaurant servers and some like I get occasional cash tips, not very often, but most people with cash tips just don't bother to write it in under their income, right? And so it's a shadow deduction because it kind of seems messed up to be taxing a small gift. Let's see. The deduction would only apply to cash tips. Oh, it would only apply to cash tips and could be claimed by people who earn up to $160,000 a year, which would rise along with inflation. Well, you see, that makes it even worse. If that's if we take that at face value, Stan, if that's true, then that means it's nothing. It means absolutely nothing because most people that get a lot of cash tips already don't declare it. Because 99.9% of my tips are not cash tips. People put it into the app and then Uber turns around and pays me. That's not a cash tip. So that's messed up. Bill would still need to be approved by the House of Representatives before it become law. Oh, never mind. Yeah, it's not law yet. I'm just a bill. Also, a lot of Earth's military could actually put up a pretty good fight against Star Wars weapons, except for their capital ships. Yeah. The only thing we couldn't defend against would be orbital bombardment. But yeah, if you dropped a bunch of walkers on the West Coast and started marching east, I'm pretty sure the U.S. Army could take them down. They tricked me with this. It passed with unanimous consent, a rare occurrence for this. For substantive legislation. Yeah, we'll see what happens when it goes to the House. The House should pass it as well, assuming everybody wants to get brownie points, so that when they run for re-election, they can say, I supported the no tax on tips. Yeah, I think you need God to work on the staff. Yes. I'm going to start talking about faith and culture. Okay, cool. Well, they couldn't really tell which way the Falcon jumped into hyperspace. Piet just told the fleet to disperse to every possible jump point since their scanning ability sucks. That's true. Once a ship is out of the local area, it's gone. And so when the Falcon attached itself to the back of Piet's, well, not Piet's, but one of the Star Destroyers in the fleet, or maybe it was Piet's, I don't remember. But anyway, but the guy said it's off our scopes, and they basically, since they figured no ship that small could have a cloaking device, which, well, won't get into The Last Jedi, but no ship that small can have a cloaking device, and so that means the Falcon must have gone into hyperspace. And so then they just need to calculate based on the trajectory they were going, what are all the possible destinations on known hyperspace corridors, which is one of the reasons that hyperspace is so limiting. People think hyperspace, well, it's faster than warp drive. Yeah, but it's extremely limited. It'd be like, yeah, I can go 200 miles an hour in my car. You can only go 80 miles an hour in your car. Yes, but I can go in any direction, and you can only go on roads. Let's see. I need to rewind. Does your translation still use the term stiff-necked? Yes, it does. I think the Empire made a mistake building the Death Star. They could have made like 200,000 Star Destroyers with the resources and manpower. Just my 2 cents. Well, here's the problem, though. Based on what some people say, I've heard Star Wars fanboys mostly arguing that the Empire has something like 180,000 Star Destroyers. To which I say, then why do they only bring 30 of them to the Battle of Endor, the most important battle in the history of the Empire? to which their response is usually either, or they'll say something like, well, it's because if they'd pulled a significant number of Star Destroyers from their posts, then the rebels would have figured out that something was up. But the thing is that the Empire knew that the rebels were all massing in the Sullust system, and so based on that, they would know that they could move Star Destroyers around without having to worry about it. Plus, as fast as hyperspace is, you just have every Star Destroyer within that quarter of the galaxy ready to jump in at the drop of a hat. And so as soon as the rebels drop out of hyperspace, Palpatine grabs his little communicator and goes, execute Order 67. And then all of a sudden, all the Star Destroyers just pop in. Let's see. Star Destroyers were better for more hard-hitting missions, while they could have been a bit smaller ships for planet protection and get even more. I don't know. I think the Star Destroyers, the primary purpose of the Star Destroyer is to project power and dominance. And for that, I think they're very effective because they're extremely imposing ships. Trustin says, good point, but I don't know to what. Our art will set us free. Okay. Planet what? Yet Order 66 didn't cause the clones to turn against Anakin and the Emperor somehow. Well, that's because, magic. Planet protection, not sure what you mean. I guess they didn't explain how control was changed. Then they were said they're perfectly loyal to their... They didn't explain how control was changed. They were said to be perfectly loyal to their owners, right? Are you talking... Oh, you're talking about the Order 66? Well, no, they do, actually. In the Clone Wars cartoon, I think it's in Clone Wars, the cartoon, one of the clones starts going nuts because his control chip that was implanted in his brain started malfunctioning. And so some of the clones... Some of the clones actually found out about Order 66 ahead of time. All right, maybe you need to call it so Michael can go rest. I'm going to soon. I am. Signed book collector, good to see you. How rough is it in your area? In northern Rutherford, southern Davidson, a lot of rain. Well, I am in northern Rutherford, so yeah, I'm getting lots of rain. A few good, shakers as far as the thunder, but, and a couple of tornado warnings, but so far nothing earth-shaking. Well, Cassian does have that speech about how they all done things in support of a cause they weren't proud of. Yeah, it's called BS. Okay. I guess they first belonged to Obi-Wan, owner, and given to the Jedi Council. Are you talking about R2 and C-3PO? So with droids, droids are slaves. There's no, I mean, it's not a euphemism. It's not a metaphor. Droids are just straight up slaves. Let's see. Sorry, wife is texting me. Sorry. Man, I am going to have to wrap up soon, guys, so give me a break here. And did you find Andor compelling to watch if it wasn't using Star Wars references? No. Because at no point did I sympathize with the characters that were supposed to be the heroes. In fact, I'll tell you how Andor could have been an incredibly compelling series, and it wouldn't take that much. Most of what you would need for it is already there. And that is you rename the series to Cyril, and you do the entire show from Cyril's perspective, to where he is a good cop living in an area that's not a directly controlled by the Empire planet. And he tries investigating this murder. His boss wants him to cover it up. He refuses because he's a good officer and all that. And you make Cyril the hero of the series. And then at the end, when he actually goes on special ops for the Empire, he sees firsthand just how brutal and cruel and evil the Empire is. So just before he dies in the tragic ending, where he's shot in the head, when Cassian doesn't even know who he is, just before that death, he realizes that he was fighting for the wrong side. That would have been a great show. Unfortunately, what we got was crap. Just a generic rebellion story. I don't even think it was a generic rebellion story because it felt like a terrorist story. The Americans were wrong in their terrorism against the crown. Well, I wouldn't say that because we had reasons, and we know what the reasons were. And how have things been on Truth Social? You know, honestly, since I've been sick, I haven't gone there, so I don't know. A woman Democrat. So there, that's true. That is true. I didn't say that because I don't see gender. I told you all us women were great when out of the kitchen. Well, you know, that's only true sometimes. Let's see. Was she a waitress when she was younger? Wow. Worked on the fries fryer at McDonald's. You guys are terrible. 10% flat rate at least. It would probably be a little more than 10%, but I think it should be a flat rate that everybody pays. I was a stock boy at a drugstore. Sorry, merchandiser. Yes. No, Michael, say it isn't true. How can you destroy my beliefs in the two-party system? Sorry. I didn't mean to shatter your little brain there. 3 hasn't helped us that much. Well, I think, you know, I agree with George Washington. Political parties are what will destroy this country. It will not be China. It will not be, Russia. It will not be, Ukraine, as Tim Pool seems to think. It will be the political parties that will destroy this country. Yep, already saw the articles about the tip taxing being more complicated than it appears. Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a nothing burger. What does the government need with taxes anyway? Can't they just print more money when they need it? Hey, what could be wrong with that after all? That's one of the reasons we have all the inflation going right now. I know Trump is trying to blame everything on Biden, but honestly, all the printing money like there's no tomorrow during COVID, which started during the Trump administration, is the reason we're paying for it now. Let's see. I see printing more money is an absolute win. Yeah, that's not going to go. I can't. I'm not going to click on the article. I think we get the idea on the note on the tax tip thing. Hey, the money does say, "In God we trust." You know who will make out like bandits with this? Strippers. Because they get a lot of cash tips. And you know what's funny, though? Because I could even see this happening. So let's say that you have, Mandy Mellons, I think was the name of the stripper from Armageddon. And so Mandy Mellons makes, $140,000 a year in tips every year because she's such a great stripper. But she only claims that she makes like $5,000 a year in tips, and on her tax form. So then we get the tax deduction for cash tips. So now, whatever the maximum, what did you say? Trying to see, what was the maximum on it? Whatever the maximum. So let's say the maximum on it is, $30,000 or whatever it is. So then all of a sudden she's going to make exactly $30,000 in tips, or she'll try to be honest. She'll make $35,000 in tips, so she'll still pay taxes on $5,000. Well, that could set up Mandy Mellons for a massive audit when they say, "Wait a minute, why did your tip money suddenly go up when the tax deduction showed up?" Hold on, that's the wife. Let me see. So Shelly Street. All right, so where is that? Pizza. Okay, yeah. Right. Um, let's see. Oh, it was Captain Needed. Yeah, that's right. Because he had to apologize to Vader. I remember that now. So the Star Wars. Don't get me started on that. Nav computer isn't really plotting a unique direct course. It's more like telling you which hyperspace highways to take. Yes. Granted, the problem is all the inner workings of how hyperspace really works is all beta canon. But because on screen, we pretty much never really see it. But the idea is that hyperspace corridors can take you to almost anywhere you want to go, but you have to plot which hyperspace lanes to take, because if you take the wrong one, as Han Solo said, you'll bounce too close to a supernova or whatever, and then apparently gravity can affect you even in hyperspace, because that's why the interdictor cruiser exists. And so if you get close to a gravity well, you get sucked out of hyperspace. So if you fly in a hyperspace lane that goes by a black hole or something, you will die. And so nav computers are the most advanced computers in the Star Wars universe. And it's really the only thing that the Federation doesn't have that the Empire does. But there is an equivalent in Star Trek, which we'll get into in a future video. It could have also attacked the Rebel fleet in Sullust. They could have, but they didn't, because they're dumb. Let's see. Star Destroyers are very intimidating when hanging in the atmosphere. That's, in fact, they are. I think they were still only in space in the first three movies. I don't think we saw a Star Destroyer in atmosphere until Rogue One, to be honest. Yeah, but a Star Destroyer doesn't have any rear mounting defenses. I'd have to look at the firing arcs of all the various turbo lasers and stuff. I don't know that that's 100% true, because I think on the bottom they've shown that they have missile turrets that can go 360. But it does seem like being behind a Star Destroyer would be an advantageous position. However, you also have to deal with the TIE fighters. Now, I'm not talking about Star Trek versus Star Wars here, just in the Star Wars universe. The TIE fighters alone are a pretty serious defense. And the Star Destroyer, while big and sluggish, is still relatively fast, and they usually don't travel alone. So they're vulnerable from the back end. Well, guess they're. And it's a good place. Missiles or torpedoes can disable one with ease, considering their shield generators are mounted on the bridge section. Well, that's a whole other thing. Yeah, you attack with. They're kind of the opposite of Star Trek, because what you do is, if you're in a Federation ship, first thing you do is launch a photon torpedo at each of the shield generators. Then you get underneath it and fire maximum phasers right into that big ball of a generator on the bottom, and the whole thing blows. Let's see. In the Moravian church, they have bishop and can get married. Okay. Well, that's fine, but that's not a whole lot to base whether you would go to a church on. I mean, any church can have a position that they call bishop, or pope for that matter. I'd like to watch that, Michael, and that runs with a cop that's like Dirty Harry. Well, and the thing is that Cyril seems like a genuinely good guy who was just on the wrong side and didn't know it. But we didn't follow that story. Instead, we followed Andor, who was on the right side, but he was doing things that were straight up evil from the beginning. The first thing he does in Andor is murder a guy in cold blood. The last thing he does in Andor is murder people in cold blood. Then in Rogue One, the first thing he does is murder someone in cold blood. Then he makes out with a chick while a nuclear blast is going to envelop them. And we're supposed to say, oh, how beautiful. Sons of Liberty didn't attack a British base in order for the British to go after the colonists. Exactly. And good to see you, Thomas. To use proof that the British Empire was evil. Yes. Honestly, if you go by Andor, the Empire did nothing wrong. I will die on that hill. Mandy Mellon sounds like a real pro. I just remember that when what's his name? I can't remember the name of the guy, but the actor, he's got the big bulging eyes and everything, and he says, "Oh my God," because when they realize he's going to survive and get back to Earth, I owe something like, $10,000 to a loan shark that I blew on a stripper named Mandy Mellons or something like that. Protestants are allowed to get married. Don't think they had bishops. Well, some do. In fact, my father-in-law's church, the pastor, what we would call a pastor or minister or rabbi or priest or whatever, they call him bishop. I mean, so that's the title is relatively unimportant. However, the problem is that it is like there is no pope in the Bible. There is a high priest, but Jesus was said to be the last high priest, and so you can't call the Pope the high priest because that would be saying that he's Jesus. And so they create the entire institution of the Pope is a man-made institution. They attacked British civilian merchant ship. We're going to get into it now. Boob job. She started jogging and cut out sweets. I'm not sure what that means. Who would fib to the government since they're so great at handling being responsible with money after all? But here's the funny thing about Robert. I understand the position that Who cares if someone lies about their income to the government, right? But Mandy Mellons, like I said, if the government investigated her after that, she could be guilty of tax evasion, which is a crime. But as a Christian, that shouldn't even be on your mind because we are called to obey the law. It is in the Bible. Good at making sure they get enough from you. They are good at that. Let's see. Why is Social Security payments taxed? Didn't you already pay tax on while working? Yeah, I think any money, honestly, and I've said this before. The only exception I would make to the income tax that I talked about before is any money that's paid by the federal government should not be taxed. Why? Because it's paid by the federal government. So to tax it is redundant. So let's say that the tax would be just pulling a random number out, we'll say 15%, right? And let's say that your Social Security benefit today would be $1,000 a month. Well, you just make it so that that same person under the same circumstances benefit would be $850 a month. There's absolutely no need to tax money that you're paying out because it's like, okay, I'm going to pay you this money, but now at the end of the year, you got to fill out a form and give me some back. That's just stupid. Weren't the corridors shown in Star Wars Rebels or Clone Wars? I'm talking about well, we've seen hyperspace corridors, but I don't know how much detail they got into. I think they did show some of it in Rebels, but I don't know how much. Social Security disability wasn't taxed when I received it for a year. Well, Social Security is a weird one because it depends on how much you make. So they'll say, for example, like if you have Social Security, and I don't know what the actual number is, but let's say that your household income is less than, we'll just pull a random number, say $20,000 a year. Then so that means that if your Social Security was $18,000 a year, but you make $5,000 a year in another job, you're going to end up paying taxes on $3,000. On the other hand, if you get $22,000 a year from Social Security, about $25,000 is the absolute max benefit. So let's say you get $25,000, you would also get taxed that same $3,000. And then just sort of pre-taxed. It should be, but it's not. Civilian isn't a military installation. So it's okay for someone to attack an American civilian ship. They're also subjects to the British Crown. Both of them were, so that's self-terrorism against the Crown, and the American colonists attacked the military post by throwing crap at them. Well, I would say this. I think that if you read the Declaration of Independence, it is painfully clear as to why we rebelled. We wrote a formal declaration about it. It's not like we were hiding the fact that we were rebelling. All right. That's why John Adams defended the British soldiers, so that we're defending themselves. Gandalf versus Voldemort. I would say Voldemort wins that because honestly, Gandalf kills more creatures with his sword than magic. But Ariel, stuff between the British were already going on when that happened, hence why they were already there. Ariel thinks it would be Gandalf. No, I think Voldemort, just based on the abilities. And I'm definitely not a Harry Potter fan. That still doesn't mean terrorism is okay, and the American colonies need to pay our fair share for World War Z. Well, since World War Z was fought on American soil, I think we did pay our fair share. Never said terrorism was okay. That's what makes the rebel scum evil. Maybe the Empire should do a blue milk tax. Doesn't blue milk come from those aquatic creatures Luke milked on the secret planet? No, that was green milk. We don't know what blue milk comes from. My theory is that blue milk comes from those, the banthas. There's already a tariff on the green stuff. I thought Luke had green milk. He did. He had blue milk on Tatooine. He had green milk on Crate. No, not Crate. Whatever it was. Porg Planet. So it must cost a fortune to buy some that has been shipped to a desert planet. Yes, indeed. In the Batman animated series, one episode is not even the Joker would go against the IRS. That's kind of funny. Luke's family must have been loaded, and Owen acts like he's desperate for free help. Yeah? Owen's kind of a jerk. You saying he deserved to die? Because I think Obi-Wan killed him. I mean, he wouldn't go against the IRS. Sorry, typo. No, I got it. Taking off. Have a good night. All right, Tristan. I'm about to wrap up. But his wife could afford exotic blue milk. Like I said, I think blue milk is probably bantha milk, which would be local. Have a funny fight. Mr. Bean versus Darkseid. Mr. Bean wins. Darkseid will shoot his Omega beams at Mr. Bean, which Mr. Bean will be like, and his eyes will get really wide, like they frequently do. And then Darkseid's Omega beams will hit Mr. Bean in the eyeballs. However, Mr. Bean happened to be wearing a new contact lens, and the contact lens happened to be the perfect frequency to reflect the Omega beam right back at Darkseid, and it kills him. Because, if there's one thing we've learned from all these live streams, is that you can't beat